ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. You can sing along. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's so wonderful to see you all here, and thanks to those of you who are joining us online. We're so grateful that you're part of our Stephen Wise Temple Shabbat community. In addition to being able to celebrate the beauty of Shabbat, we also have an Ufruf today for Casey and Josh, and we're so excited for your wedding weekend. And some of our young people in our congregation are helping to lead our service, and that makes me so happy. And we have the band, which makes me so happy, and our new music director, Tali Todmore. Thank you, Tali, for being here, and thank you to Yaron and to Jeff and to Larry. We missed you, Larry. Welcome back, and thanks, everybody. We're going to continue with a prayer for our souls. It's on page 76 in your prayer book, Elohai Neshama, and it reminds us that there is a purity inside of us, and we can always go back to that purity. We can always go back. Sorry, it's not 76, it's 78. 78. We can always go back to that purity. At any time, we can tap into that, reminding ourselves that there is goodness inside of us. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi Tehorahi. Try that part. Elohai, Elohai. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi Tehorahi. Ata verata, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi, ve'ata mishamra b'kirbi. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi Tehorahi. page 79, you can read the English with me if you care to. My soul came to me pure, drawn from the reservoir of the holy. All the time it remains within me. I'm thankful for its thirst, for compassion and justice. Let my eyes behold the beauty of all creatures. Let my hands know the privilege of righteous deeds. And on the following pages, there are Nisim B'chol Yom. And just, I'll give you a minute on your own to just look through them. And these are everyday blessings for sight and for our freedom, for the ability to walk. Just take a moment and maybe just focus on one of those blessings. And you can offer thanksgiving for something that's so ordinary that we take it for granted, but it's actually a gift and a blessing. Take a moment to say thanks. When you're ready, you can rise on page 108 for Baruch Hu, our call to worship. Ya Elai, Ya Elai, Ya Elai, Ya Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Ya Elai, Ya Elai, Ya Elai, Ya Elai, Ya Elai, Ya Elai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Yotze or uvarech Hoshem, Oseh shalom shalom uvoretz hakol. Yotze or uvarech Hoshem, Oseh shalom shalom uvoretz hakol, uvoretz hakol, uvoretz hakol.
In just a moment, you're going to hear Rocky and Roman as they help lead us in what is perhaps the ultimate prayer in Jewish tradition. We say it in the morning and in the evening when we ask ourselves to remember that Adonai is our God, Adonai alone. But the interesting thing is that we begin with Shema Yisrael. We begin with Listen, Israel. And all that is just a command. It's just Moses trying to get the Israelites' attention. He does it like 10 more times in the book of Devarim. And yet we put this part in the prayer. And I think it's beautiful because I think it reminds us that growth, that understanding, that love, that contentment, that our entire spiritual journey begins with the act of listening, with the act of opening our minds and opening our ears and opening our hearts, not just to the wonders of nature, not just to the words of our favorite rabbi, but also to the ones we love, to the strangers we meet in the street, to the people we drive alongside on the highway. By opening ourselves up, we become more whole. Shema Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
You can all be seated. We're on page 116.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, וחיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושמרת לבביך ודיברת בם בשבתך ובבריתך ובלכתך בדרך ובלכתך ובקומך, ושרת מאוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבת על מזוזות ביתך ופרי שעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם בכל מצוותיים, כי כן קדושים אלוהיהם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם בין ארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם ארץ.
Thank you, Rocky and Roman, proud graduates of our school. And before you know it, it'll be time for your B'nai Mitzvah. And I get to be there, which makes me very happy. If you turn to page 117, reminder of what Michamocha in some ways is all about. We are granted the gift of freedom for a purpose. And part of that purpose is to bring freedom to others. And if you weren't able to be with us last night, really want you to listen to Rabbi Josh Noble's sermon from last night about reproductive freedom and reproductive rights, and how our Jewish tradition is very much at odds with the recent Supreme Court decision. So make sure you listen to that. It's online. But you can join with me on page 117. If we can hear the words from Sinai, then love will flow from us and we shall serve all that is holy with our intellect and all our passion and all our life. If we can serve all that is holy, we shall be doing all that humans can to help the rains to flow, the grasses to be green, the grains to be golden like the sun, and the rivers to be filled with life once more. All the children of God shall eat, and there will be enough. But if we turn from Sinai's words and serve only what is common and profane, making gods of our own comfort or power, then the holiness of life will contract for us. Our world will grow inhospitable. Let us therefore lace these words into our passion and our intellect and bind them as a sign upon our hands and eyes. Let us write them in mezuzot upon our doors and teach them to our children. Let us honor the generations that came before us, keeping the promise for those yet to be. You can turn to page 122 for our prayer of freedom. Yai, lai, 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 lai. 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 Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh. Nora tehilot. Osef ele, osef ele. Shira chadasha, shibchu geulim, לשמחה על שפת הים. יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. יה אלי, 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 יה אלי, 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 יה אלי, 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 צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופדי נאומך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. יה אלי, 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 יה אלי, 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 יה אלי, 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 יה אלי, אלי, אמן.
We're going to continue in a moment with our tefillah, which you can find on page 124. Traditionally, it's a standing prayer, and there are traditional, how do you say this? There are traditional beginnings to the prayer, which we're going to say together, and then we'll have the opportunity to say the remainder of our prayers on our own this morning. How does this prayer start? Well, it starts like you might start an email to your boss, or for those of us who are a little bit younger, the way you might start a request to your parents for that toy that you've always wanted. It starts by saying, hey, God, do you remember Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Sarah and Rebecca and Rachel and Leah? Do you remember how you were cool with them? Well, you should be cool with me too, because I'm their great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchild, right? Like, do you remember when I cleaned my room so well? Do you remember how well I cleaned my room, Mom and Dad? Oh, okay. By the way, just wanted to say, thank you, God, for creating all of life. That was amazing. That was so great. You guys are such great parents. Thank you. Now, thank you for the opportunity to be holy. Thank you for just giving me this opportunities to do great things in our house, like clean up the table and wash the dishes and do the clothes. Oh, by the way, if I do all these things, can I have X, Y, and Z? Right? And this is how the prayer is really structured. It's literally us navigating these same conversations that we navigate every day and then saying, oh, by the way, God, it would be really nice if we could all have freedom, if there could be enough food, if we could have enough rain, if we could do all of these things. On Shabbat, we tend to put some of those aside and we ask God just for the perfect rest. And what that means is entirely up to you. So we're going to rise together on page 124. We're going to say those opening prayers together, and then we're going to ask God for the perfect rest on our own, because that might look different to each and every one of us.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואמהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם ארוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. Page 130. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני, אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו ומלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אם לא Adonai leolam, Elohai Tzion, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Page 132. ישמחו ומלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עוני שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עוני שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת, כולם יספעו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עוני שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עוני שבת. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת, חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה וראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עוני שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. Take a few moments for silent prayer. You can be inspired by the words of the prayer book. The traditional Shabbat morning Amidah is on the right-hand side of each page, and on the left-hand side are kavanot, intentions inspired by those words. Take a few moments to add your own prayers, and when you're done with your silent Amidah, you can be seated. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך.
שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו, והכל ישראל עמך. שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו, והכל ישראל עמך.
ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום בשלום. שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו, והכל ישראל עמך. שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו, והכל ישראל עמך. עלינו, והכל ישראל עמך. עלינו, והכל ישראל עמך. We're so lucky. We have so many incredible talents joining us today. Of course, our amazing band, Tali Todmore, Rocky, Roman, and Romy. And so if you're going to be a vocalist today, you have to have an R. That was the whole thing. There were some other people who wanted to join in, and we said, absolutely not. Some kid named Evan, and we just said, nope, can't do it. Casey would have been invited, but other than that, no exceptions. And exciting, can I share the news, Romy, about your show? So Romy's got a TV show coming out. It's called Best Foot Forward on Apple Plus. And also in October, if you're in New York City, some of you are, who's from New York City? Have you heard of this playwright? His name's Tom Stoppard. He's very promising. He's getting, it's a good start for him. He's got a play called Leopoldstadt, and Romy's in it. So if you want to go see her on Broadway, but listen, if you need tickets or anything like that, come see me, all right? And I've got an arrangement with Romy. Got a buyback deal. It's going to be great. Okay, well, we have the highlight of our service is when we take our Torah and we chant Torah, and we're also going to have a blessing for Casey and Josh, and we'll have an aliyah for them. And so it's special, and we're going to have a little text study with Rabbi Josh, and just so glad you're all here. We'll also have an opportunity to offer a Misha Berach for Refuah for anybody who's in need of healing. But we'll begin our Torah service on page 246. And Casey, we need a family member of yours to come forward and hold the Torah. Who should we invite to do that? How about your dad? How about Bruce Gersh? Bruce, come on up. I kind of lofted you a little, softball there, and you were going to hit it out of the park. No, you got it eventually. You got to Dad. So, Bruce, come on up. Let's all stand up as we bring the Torah from the Ark. Ein kamocha va'elohim Adonai ve'ein kema'asecha מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. אב הרחמים, היטיבה ברצונך את ציון. תבנה חומות ירושלים, תבנה חומות ירושלים. כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך אל רם ונישא, אדון עולמים. כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדוש.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו. גדלו לאדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו. לך אדוני הגדולה והגבורה והתפארת והנצח וההוד. כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, לך אדוני הממלכה והמתנשא לכו לראש. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. So on your way in, you might have seen the burgundy chumashim, and if you want to grab one, Karen's right back there. Thank you, Karen, for helping. You can grab a chumash, and you can follow along. We're on page 860, and we are in Parashat Korach. And again, another shout out to my bro, Rabbi Josh Noble. You should check out this sermon from last night because I'm still fired up about it. I'm so fired up about it. It was just beautiful and powerful and important. So check that out. And he connected Parashat Korach and the rebellion of Korach to the Dobbs decision. So you want to check that out. But this week's Torah portion, I actually wrote a little something about this yesterday. Very interesting with the January 6th hearings about the attack on the Capitol and the insurrection and acts of sedition that we witnessed, in fact. I connected that to Korach because the Korach rebellion, he says that he just wants sort of to share power with everyone else, and why can't I have a little bit of that power? But what we realize is that that's not really what it's about. That's not really what's driving it. It's really about his own ego, his own ambition, his own needs, and that's not leadership, is it, Rabbi Josh Noble?
Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
You would agree with me on that one. Okay, good. And this guy knows a thing or two about leadership because he served our country with distinction. You might not know this, Gershes and Birkins, Rabbi and Rosens, and Rabbi Noble served in the United States Army for 8 years?
Actually, 16. When you count it all
16
up.
years. 16 years, but you're not that old. Because you went to West Point, and so it counts. But then he was in Kuwait, he was in Iraq, he was in Afghanistan, some of the most beautiful parts of the world you got to see. So thank you for serving our nation. And on this July 4th weekend, we owe you a debt of gratitude especially. So we are going to have some aliyot, and for the first aliyah, we're going to invite any member of Casey and Josh's family who wants to come for an aliyah, where we welcome group aliyot, so we can have Saba, we can have Savta, we can have your folks, we can have anyone who wants to come on up. Come on up for an aliyah. Yeah, don't be shy. Saba, come on up.
We're going to nominate grandparents. You got to come up. And other
Grandparents-
people are going to come up with
Grandparents are kind of required, but anyone else is welcome to come. You want to come on up for an aliyah? No
Cousins.
one's forced. No one's forced to because
you. Nieces,
we do.
nephews.
Because we believe in religious freedom. We believe people get to do what they want. But come on up. Come on up. And we have Talitot. Karen, can you just bring us a few extra? Haley's coming up. You know, these are day school graduates, so I know you know not just how to do an aliyah. Come right over here. It's right here. And Rabbi Josh will show us where we're starting with
gonna start
Parshat Korach right there. If you want to take a talit. And if you're following along at home, we are in the book of Numbers. We are in chapter 16, verses 1 through 3 for our first aliyah. Come close to Torah. Come over here. Come close to Torah. And can you just hold right here, Saba? Okay. All right. Hold on. Let me get this for you.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bacharbanu mikol hamim. V'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai yotzena Torah.
Amen. Amen. V'yikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kehat ben Levi v'Datan v'Aviram b'nei Eliav v'on ben Pelet b'nei Reuven v'yakumu lifnei Moshe v'yanashim b'bnei Yisrael chameshim u'matayim Nesiya Eda Nesiya Rega Nesiya 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 Eda Eda Kremo Ed Anshe Shem V'yikalu Al Moshe v'al Haron Vayomruhu Alehem Rav Lachem כי היא כל העדה כולם קדושים, ובתוכם אדוני, ומדוע תתנשאו על קהל אדוני.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata
b'tochenu. Baruch atah
Adonai
Adonai.
noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher koach. And you guys can go and have a seat.
No, it's okay. It was just the note. So what did we read? And Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahat ben Levi took, and we're not told what took means. In the translation, if you're reading along, it might say he betook himself. That's not what we're going to study, but it's worth mentioning. And Datan va'Aviram, the children of Eliav and On, the children of Pelet, who are the children of Reuven. They rose up before Moses, and the men of Israel, with 250 people in the midst of the leaders of the congregation, at the place where those people met. And they gathered against Moses and Aaron, and they said to them, Rav lachem, you could say you've gone too far, or you've made too much of yourselves. Ki chol ha'edah, for the entire congregation, all of them are sacred, all of them are holy, and God is in their midst. And therefore, why do you, Moses and Aaron, lift yourselves above God's community? Our second aliyah will begin with verse 4. You could follow it along on the beginning of the next page.
Shkoch. And now, the moment many of us have been waiting for. Casey and Josh are going to come up for an aliyah. Josh also prepared a Devar Torah. Right, Josh? I'm kidding. Come on up.
Did he say yes?
He gave me a big smile. But if you want a Devar Torah, you can have it. Come on up here, and you'll lead us in an aliyah, and then I'll give you, with great joy, a blessing.
Okay. We're right here if you want to touch.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Hamburach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen. וישמע משה ויפול על פניו וידבר אל קורח ועל כל עדתו לאמור בוקר ויודע אדוני את אשר לו ואת הקדוש והקריב אליו ואת אשר יבחר בו יקריב אליו. זאת עשו, קחו לכם מחתות קורח וכל עדתו.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Beautiful. You know, no, don't go anywhere. You get your blessing. So I want to invite your parents to come up. So please come forward. And you can stand right behind your children. And we're so lucky that we get to celebrate this at Stephen Wise Temple because the wedding and the celebration are going to be right here, which is so exciting for us. And I get to be your officiant, which is a super big honor for me. But it's really not just a joyous time for your families, for the Gershises and the Birkinsons. But really, it's a joyous time for Am Yisrael, for the Jewish people, because we get to see a new mishpacha, a new family formed, and God willing, in good time, no rush. You'll bring children into this world. Sharon, no rush. It's their choice. And we're just so pleased and so happy. And for your entire family who's here, and for people who are maybe joining right now online or who are going to watch this later, it's just a great honor for me and for Rabbi Josh and for all of us to be here with you. Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel v'Leah, Hu Yishlach Bracha v'Hatzlacha, Briut v'Osher lezug hazeh. May God, who brought blessings to our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bring the blessings of health and joy and well-being and prosperity and kindness and love, happiness and goodness to this couple, to Casey and to Josh, all the days of their lives. And should they ever need the strength of community, they should know that they have community surrounding them. And should they ever need the strength of family, they should know that they have family who loves them and friends who care for them. And let us say Amen, and let us say Mazel Tov. Tovu Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simin Tov, Simin Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simin Tov, Simin Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simin Tov. Yehelanu, 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 Ulechol Yisrael. Yehelanu, Yehelanu, Ulechol Yisrael. David Melech Yisrael, Chai v'kayam. David Melech Yisrael, Chai v'kayam. Mazel Tov. That little bass run he did, that was For the honor of our third and final aliyah, I'm going to invite anybody who is praying for healing for a loved one, or it could be maybe you're praying for healing for yourself, but maybe there's someone who is especially in need of a blessing right now, especially in need of a bracha right now, because they are experiencing illness or either physical illness, or maybe it's an emotional illness that they're dealing with. You can come forward. We'll invite you to say that blessing. Come stand right over here. Where'd you end up?
Sorry, I had it there.
Let's see. Yeah, there you go. You can touch right there. Right over here. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Utnu vahen esh v'simu alehem ketoret lifnei Adonai machar v'haya ha'ish asher yivchar Adonai hu hakadosh rav lachem b'nei Levi vayomer Moshe el Korach Shimuna b'nei Levi, hame'at mikem, ki hivdil Elohei Yisrael etchem. Me'adat Yisrael lehakriv etchem, elav lavod et avodat mishkan Adonai, ולעמוד לפני העדה לשרתם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמס וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
With the Torah before us, don't go anywhere quite yet. We're going to offer a Misha Berach for Refuah. You can find it if you're following along in your prayer book on page 253 back in the blue book. And we'll think of all of those people whom we're praying for. If you want to say a name out loud, you can do so right now. And if you are joining us online and you want to put someone's name in the chat, you can do that. And maybe afterwards, especially if you are praying for a loved one or a friend, make sure to reach out to them after Shabbat or this afternoon and just tell them, I'm thinking of you, I love you, I said a prayer for you, and I'm hoping that you will be strong and you will find comfort and you will find hope knowing that there are loved ones who care so deeply for you. Misha Berach L'Refuah. Sheberach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We're going to study a little Torah, so Rabbi Josh, I think, has a special Torah handout for us. And this is this really interesting parashah where we get this intertribal conflict, because in the verses that I chanted, there's this back and forth where Korach says, and this is in verse 6, verse 7. Korach says, verse 3. Korach and his supporters come and they say, Rav lachem, you've gone too far, Moses and Aaron, for all the community are holy, all of them, and the eternal God is in their midst. Why do you raise yourselves above the Lord's congregation? And they call them B'nai Levi. But then a little bit later, 3 verses later, Moses says the same thing right back to Korach and says, you're B'nai Levi too. So they're all cousins and they're fighting. I won't ask for a show of hands, but sometimes this happens in family businesses. You have this conflict and it's cousins and brothers and sisters fighting with each other, and it's particularly painful. And there's this terrible falling out. And as Rabbi Josh referenced last night, it ends very badly for Korach and his followers because the earth opens up and swallows them, expressing God's divine displeasure. But Rabbi Josh is going to take us into a deep dive in a few of these verses. So Rabbi Josh, take us away.
Thank you so kindly, Rabbi Yoshi. So as Rabbi Yoshi mentioned, this doesn't end well for Korach and his followers. But before that, there's sort of this threatening thing that happens because Moses basically sets up a showdown with him and his brother on one side and Korach on the other. And so they're all supposed to bring their fire pans and offer a sacrifice to God. And whoever God answers is the winner. And they both do it in the morning. Korach rouses the whole congregation to come along with him. And they set out their pans, and God answers. And God comes to Moses and Aaron and says, get out of the way. I'm going to annihilate this entire people. You could see here sort of, if you read the translation, it would be really nice. Does anybody here read English? Does anybody here read English? Amazing. We have some English readers. Okay. So you raised your hand, though. So would you mind reading this in the English for me? Just these first 3 lines.
This one. God spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, stand back from this community, that I may annihilate them in an instant. But they fell on their faces and said, O God, source of the breath of all flesh, when one man sins, will you be wrathful with the whole community?
Thank you so much. That was well done. Yasher koach. So we see that God's ready to sort of blow the whole thing up. And this is not the first time this has happened in the Torah. But Moses and Aaron are obviously surprised. They're like, what are you talking about, God? Like, you're going a little overboard, right? And the rabbis also have a problem with this. They're like, what's going on here? And so they try to understand what's going on here. And so we have the first sort of, and I want to say the classic understanding comes from an author called the Ramban. Sometimes he's referred to as Nachmanides. And does anybody want to play the role of a 13th century rabbinic commentator for us? Oh, yeah, with a Spanish accent. We definitely need this. There we go. Somebody raise their hand for that.
I only have a Jewish accent, so sorry.
No, do Spanish.
If the majority of Israel had not rebelled alongside Korach, then why was God's wrath directed against them? If they had rebelled alongside Korach, then why do Moses and Aaron say, one man? Rabbeinu Hananel teaches that the community in verse 21 refers to Korach and his co-conspirators, but Moses misunderstood God's intent.
That was amazing, an amazing combination of my grandfather and an Israeli voice. I really appreciate that. It brought me back. So we have this first idea that, well, this is just a miscommunication. God doesn't really want to annihilate the people of Israel. Moses and Aaron just didn't understand what was going on. Those silly Moses and Aaron, they were just preoccupied. And we have another commentator, Ibn Ezra. Our next commentator basically agrees with this. He says, yeah, God just wanted Moses to stand back from Korach and his gang. But we have another interpretation here from a gentleman by the name of Avravanel. Anyone who's willing to read that one for us? Okay, well, we do have volunteer. Amazing.
When God saw that all Israel was gathered there, and no one was protesting when what Korach was doing, God told Moses and Aaron, forget about the test. Stand back and let me annihilate them.
Okay. So Avravanel says, no, this is exactly as it appears in the text. God is upset with the whole community of Israel. What is God upset about? They didn't speak up. They didn't interfere. They didn't respond to what was going on around them. And one might say, they didn't take a side. Sitting on the sidelines while an injustice is going on, according to Avravanel, is not something that we're permitted to do. And that's why God's wrath was kindled against the Israelites. The question I have for you this morning, and I'd love for you to turn sort of to your neighbor, maybe even find somebody you don't know, maybe cross the aisle. It's crazy. It's crazy. Maybe even cross the aisle, find somebody you don't know. We have two questions. The first is, we get to interpret Torah just as well as our ancestors do. So I want your answer to the question. What's going on here, right? Do you agree with one of these sides or the other? Maybe you have your own interpretation. We'd love to hear from you. The second question is, if you think that Avravanel's interpretation is deserving of further exploration, then the question becomes, what should we be speaking out against in this moment, lest we be annihilated by God? Probably not by the earth swallowing us up like it does Korach, but you get the idea. All right? So we're going to give you all a few minutes to explore on your own, form some groups. You all have the sheets. We've got some ringers in the group here, clearly. So let's come up with some answers. We have about 5 minutes, and then we'll share them with the group. Does that sound good? Awesome. Yes? Amazing.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, you're Jews. It's not hard for you to talk.
If you're joining us online, you can put something in the chat. Put an idea in there. You can think about how this all... We're looking at Numbers 16, verse 20 through 22. 16, 20 through 22.
All right, friends, let's wrap this up, because I already hear people talking about the Dodgers and the Lakers. I know it's free agency. Don't worry, the Lakers are overcapped. You're not getting anybody. Okay, so any thoughts to either one of those questions? Your interpretation of the events, or what this idea of Avravanel might tell us? Don't raise your hands all at once. I'm going to get 3 answers out of you one way or the other, whether I choose who's going to answer or you raise your hand. So, there we go. Amazing.
I have an idea that Moses and Aaron, Korah was looking to take over. He was trying to get in. No voting, no anything. And God said, let me destroy and the community and this thing, but it's one man. The problem is they were following him. So he's saying we got to get rid of all the evil, all the people that are insurrection. That's the way that's the way I look at it. Moses and Aaron wanted to keep the peace, but they were the true people who were appointed.
Okay. Like Ibn Ezra, you feel that the community that God is targeting here is not the entire community, but rather those people who followed Korach. Wonderful. Thank you. I saw another hand here.
So another idea, since we just recently accepted the Torah, we just said we will do and then we will listen. And the concept is that we took on that entire liability to God, saying we will follow your orders, your rules, your commandments. And then at that point, the whole entire community was just saying, oh, this one person's not following and not believing the first commandment, which is I am your God. And it's the whole concept is questioning God and questioning that kind of devotion to him. So when the entire community says nothing, does nothing, and people are following that, it's basically saying we didn't even accept your laws in the first place, which is why he's totally willing to smite the entire community. Because it's basically saying the one thing that we prove to God, saying we'll do and then we'll listen, we'll accept everything, and why he chose us, we just completely threw away at that moment.
Amazing. What year of rabbinic school are you in again?
I actually studied in a kollel in Israel for a year.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, we got a lot of learning here. I appreciate it. We'd love to get a female voice to cap us off at the end here. Thank you. Well, now we have some real scholarship. I'll stand back.
Well, in the case that God is upset that the people of Israel aren't standing up for injustice, I think that's the easiest one for me to understand. And I think it's really relevant to our lives too, because as Jews, we're supposed to stand up when we see something that's against our values. So I think that's my favorite interpretation.
Genius. That kid's a genius. I love that kid. She's amazing. Thank you, Rabbi Josh, and thank you, everybody, for your participation. And thanks to those of you joining online. Maybe you were able to share a thought or two. But obviously, it's a very rich parasha and particularly relevant for so many of the things that we're dealing with right now. Sadly, it'd be wonderful if there weren't those connections in some ways. It's time to return the Torah to our beautiful outdoor ark. And so I'm going to invite Cindy and Lane to come forward. We're on page 252. And as Rabbi Josh lifts the Torah, I want everyone to please rise. וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. On page 282, you can remain standing for Aleinu L'Shabach. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו echad.
Please be seated. Just as we celebrate moments of joy in our prayers, we also experience moments of sorrow and memory. And, especially as you're preparing to get married, I imagine that there are people who will be at your wedding in spirit, but not in the flesh. And so we want to remember them as well as anyone is remembering today. So if you are currently sitting Shiva the first 7 days of mourning the loss of a loved one, or Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning for the loss of a loved one, or in the first year of mourning the loss of a parent, or commemorating the Yortzeit, the anniversary of a loved one's passing. If you're online, we'd invite you to share the names of your loved ones so that we can honor their memory together. And if you're here, we'd invite you to please rise and provide the names of the loved ones that you're remembering here with us today. Thank you for honoring his memory together with us. Kaddish Yatom can be found on page 294. We invite everyone present to please rise as we praise God in the memory of our loved ones. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, bi'alma divra chiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, b'agala v'zman kari v'yimru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach le'olam olomei maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitrumam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudisha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'miran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlam rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha. We ask that the memory of our loved ones always remain a blessing, and together we say, Amen. Please be seated.
Invite Rocky and Roman to come back up for our closing song, Oseh Shalom. It's so beautiful to, as I said earlier, to have some of our young people here. I mean, everybody here is young, everybody. To have some of our, like pre-B'nai Mitzvah age young people lead our service with us. And so I want to thank Rosen for joining us earlier for our Sim Shalom, and Rocky and Roman. And I want to thank everybody for being here with us. Thank you, Roz, and to our amazing crew. Thank you so much for helping us celebrate this. And thank you so much to Tali and Yaron and Jeff and Larry. We're so grateful for the beautiful musicianship and really the spirit, the neshama that you bring to our worship. It means everything to us. The last words of the Kaddish prayer in 294, Oseh Shalom Bimromav. May the one who makes peace in the high places make peace for us here on earth, for us and all Israel, for our beautiful Chatan, Josh, and our beautiful Kala, Casey, all of our wishes for mazel and joy and happiness. And for everybody joining us from home, thank you so much for being part of our service. Rocky, Roman, you ready to sing Oseh Shalom? Oseh Shalom Bimromav,
Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu. Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu.
Oseh Shalom Bimromav,
Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu.
Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael.
Yaseh Shalom,
Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu. Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu. Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Uyaseh Shalom Aleinu. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu. Ve'al Kol Yisrael. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל העולם. Shabbat shalom, everybody.